the joke that I did for Dave Chappelle when I met an indigenous guy in Orville, BC, or sorry, Orville, Washington State, which is right next to Osoyoos, BC, by the way. And it was like on top of the hill across from the campground. You'd have to walk up, and then there's a gas station on the right hand side. It's changed names dozens of times, and then down the road there's a Fountain Tire. But across the highway and across the road there's a grocery store mixed with a clothing store mixed with like a sporting and hunting, and like there's guns there and stuff like that. And I met this indigenous person in an aisle, in a fishing aisle, right next to the guns. And I have the layout of the store inside my head because, like, I grew up going there, and it's ingrained inside my head because, you know, I have Asperger's and slightly photogenic memory of, like, I remember details which no one else remembers, so, you know, annoying as shit. I can tell you the entire layout of the store in Orville, and, why would I know this? Anyways, I met him in the fishing aisle, and I was like, are you a real Indian from, like here? Like, this part? And he's like, yeah. Am I not red-skinned enough for you? And, he was probably about 50 or so. And I asked him if he smoked pot, and he did. And, took me out. And, pretty much threw me a powwow to sell me some fucking weed and tell me some stories. And it was a lot of fun. And I just... Now it dawns on me that, you know, my ancestors were fur traders and traders in general. And this is how they introduced one another to, like, learn history about each other. I'm fairly certain this indigenous person didn't even realize that my great-grandfather times 5 traded with their people. And, you know, we definitely traded some good moments that day. I also understand why my family takes that route down to Osoyoos every summer. Well, they used to anyways, when they were still alive. My other grandpa on my other side would take the David Thompson route around North America with his 1970 Ford, which was also one of his great-grandfathers. And then my other side of my family was the indigenous side, which was the fur traders. And I find it super fascinating that the fur trade route that my ancestor took David Thompson on, the highway is named after David Thompson and not the indigenous fur traders that used that route. A lot of these things seem to correlate, especially when I go down to, like, BC and, like, Oliver, BC. There's a John Oliver. Not the same John Oliver that you're thinking of, but the guy who founded Oliver, BC, which was also on indigenous land. He was let's say, a southern gentleman looking guy. It's fascinating to me how in North America, most of the white towns, or like the colony towns, are all named after British or like southern people, like white folk, super white folk. And there's not really very many indigenous named places, even though all the places that they got to see were shown by indigenous people. I don't understand this. Maybe it's the fact that people from Europe have conquered this fucking planet, and no one wants to point out the fact that, hey, if you go to each Commonwealth country around the planet, why do all the politicians from both sides of the table, like liberals and conservatives, all of them have the same fucking last names. It's kind of fucking weird. It's like, is it really a democratic society, or is it just a fox? Are you guys being fucking hoodwinked? I'm gonna go for the latter and say that you're being hoodwinked, and what you think is a democratic society is nothing more than a shell game being played with royal families, ensuring that their offspring get the best in life while everyone else suffers, even the indigenous people of that land. When I read more into my ancestors' history within Alberta, I start to notice that, my people gave up their indigenous status to be treated as equals and went to World War II and fought in World War II. And they won. And as soon as they got back home, they were treated like second-class citizens, even though they just fought in a fucking world war and won. But yet, when they get back home, outcast from regular society and treated like second-class citizens. Does that sound like a democratic society to you? Because it sure doesn't sound like one to me.